politicians lie to you. Worldwide. We'll prove it. Prove it!
In recent decades, two nations in Latin America have remained at the center of one of the most persistent geopolitical confrontations in the Western Hemisphere, Cuba and Venezuela. And on the other side, the United States. This is not a routine policy disagreement. This is the story of systematic pressure applied to reshape political power inside two sovereign states, a story that is still unfolding. It begins in Cuba, 1959. The revolution succeeds. A new government emerges and declares openly and decisively that political alignment with Washington is over. The U.S. response is immediate and direct. Economic embargo, diplomatic isolation, and just 2 years later, the failed Bay of Pigs invasion. The objective was unmistakable: regime change. The invasion failed, but the pressure did not end. Sanctions evolved into a permanent instrument of policy. Cuba was labeled a state sponsor of terrorism, and a historic confrontation was locked in, one that has never truly been resolved. Years later, the stage shifted south to Venezuela. Under Hugo Chavez and then Nicolas Maduro, a new model of governance took shape: state control of oil and an explicitly anti-imperialist political doctrine. In Washington, this was not treated as a purely domestic development. It was assessed as a strategic threat to U.S. regional influence. After the disputed 2018 election, the United States rejected the result. In January 2019, Washington formally recognized Juan Guaidó as interim president. At the same time, sweeping oil and financial sanctions were deployed against Caracas. Those measures severely restricted the government's access to revenue and escalated economic pressure inside the country to unprecedented levels. And here, a critical legal question emerges: where do these actions stand under international law? The fundamental doctrine of non-intervention in the internal affairs of states is explicit. No government may use political or economic coercion to dictate the internal political path of another sovereign nation. Many legal scholars argue that elements of U.S. policy toward Venezuela and toward Cuba move dangerously close to that line or cross it outright. Supporters of Washington's strategy respond that the objective is democracy and human rights. Critics counter with a blunt question: when economic pressure cripples a nation's economy, when millions are forced to leave their homes, who actually bears the cost of this strategy? On the ground, the reality is clear. The government in Caracas remains in power, but the society has absorbed extraordinary pressure, and viewed in a wider frame, the message is stark. In the Western Hemisphere, a government that steps outside Washington's preferred political model can expect a spectrum of systemic pressure, from sanctions to financial isolation to outright political delegitimization. This approach is not temporary. It is a long-term strategy of regional control. In theory, international law prohibits intervention. In practice, great power foreign policy has always operated beyond the neat boundaries of legal language. Today, Cuba remains under economic embargo. Venezuela remains under sweeping sanctions, and the relationship between these states and the United States stands as one of the clearest examples of the collision between geopolitical power and the principles of international law, a confrontation that is still very much alive and shows no sign of ending soon.